Okay, welcome to the Asheville City Council meeting. If everyone could just take a moment to silence your cell phones. If you would like to sign up to speak on tonight's agenda, just go out into the hall and there's someone who will sign you up to speak, and it will populate on our list here, which I need to make sure I have in front of me too. And can you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have one proclamation this evening, and that is a proclamation regarding Independent Retailer Month. And Sherry Lucas, I understand, is here. And if you have anybody else with you, please come forward at this time, and I'll meet you down at the lectern. Whereas the City of Asheville is proud to join with Asheville Downtown Association, Explore Asheville, Go Local Asheville, Historic Biltmore Village Association, Merchants of Downtown Asheville, River Arts District Artists, and West Asheville Business Association in supporting and celebrating Asheville's local independent retailers and the positive impact they have on the city's culture, economy, and character. Whereas Independent Retailer Month provides a time to celebrate the independence of the people of our community and the entrepreneurial spirit represented by our local independent retailers. And whereas the individual decisions we make today shape the future of our communities. Whereas local independent retailers help preserve the uniqueness of Asheville and give us a sense of place. And whereas independently owned retailers give back to our communities in goods, services, jobs, time, and talent. Whereas the health of our economy and that of each community depends on our support of businesses owned by our friends and neighbors. And whereas independent retailers, owners, and employees enrich our purchasing experiences with their knowledge and passion. And whereas we acknowledge that the well-being of all our communities lies within each of us. Now therefore I, Esther Manheimer, Mayor of the City of Asheville, do hereby proclaim the month of July 2025 as Independent Retailer Month in the City of Asheville, and salute our citizens and local independent retailers who are integral to the unique flavor of our city and county, and honor their efforts to make our community the place we want to live and work.
Well, let me introduce Emily. Emily is with Explore Asheville and one of the named on the proclamation. And just want to say thank you. As we all know here, that our independent businesses are still struggling. And July, being Independent Retailer Month nationwide, it just seemed like such a great opportunity to bring it here and to use it along with other promotions to support our independent retailers for the month. So I'm really appreciative to all of you, and to thank you again. Do you have anything you want to say, Emily?
No, just thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, let's let Ken take a picture.
Oh, awesome.
And you'll get to keep this, of course.
Thanks.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to the Vice Mayor for a brief moment to make some comments about the passing of James Ferguson.
Thank you, Mayor. Before we begin the business portion of the meeting, I do want to take a few moments to honor the life and legacy of one of Asheville's most extraordinary sons, Mr. James E. Ferguson II, who passed away last week. Mr. Ferguson was born here in Asheville in 1942, one of 7 children in a hardworking family who lived near Blanton Street. His parents earned their living selling coal and kindling wood and doing domestic work for white families. Even amid the harshness of segregation, Mr. Ferguson was shaped by the strength of community and the power of mentors who saw his potential early on. As a teenager, he helped form the Asheville Student Committee on Racial Equality, ASCORE, and that was a group of young people who successfully desegregated lunch counters, libraries, public facilities right here in Asheville. He served as ASCORE's first president and attended the founding meeting of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, in Raleigh in 1960. I remember his speaking about how meaningful it was to connect with others who had also been at that historic meeting. That shared experience bonded him with many local leaders of that generation, including members of my own family. A few years later, he married fellow ASCORE leader and its third president, the wonderful Barbara Turmett, who grew up in East End. They shared a deep love not only for each other, but for justice, culture, and community. Over nearly 56 years of marriage, they raised 3 children, celebrated 4 grandchildren, and welcomed 2 great-grandchildren. Mr. Ferguson's career was a masterclass in using the law to make justice real. He also played a key role in enforcing North Carolina's statewide school desegregation order, continuing the legal fight to dismantle the remnants of Jim Crow in our public education system. He served as student body president at North Carolina Central University, earned his law degree at Columbia, and co-founded North Carolina's first integrated law firm, alongside Adam Stein, the father of our current governor, Josh Stein. As a young attorney, he led the defense in the landmark Wilmington 10 case, advocating for wrongly convicted civil rights activists and ultimately securing their full pardons. He trained Black lawyers in apartheid-era South Africa, challenged racial bias under North Carolina's Racial Justice Act, and helped exonerate the wrongfully imprisoned, all while setting a national standard for courage and brilliance in the courtroom. Even after all that, Mr. Ferguson never turned his back on Asheville. In recent years, he returned to help this city reckon with the harm and imagine a more restorative way forward. He knew that justice wasn't just a matter of verdicts, it was a matter of values, and he lived those values every day. He was honored many times over, named one of the top 10 litigators in America by the National Law Journal, featured in the Best Lawyers in America for decades, and presented with the Order of the Longleaf Pine by Governor Stein at Asheville's 2024 MLK Jr. breakfast. But titles alone can't capture the depth of who he was. He was a freedom fighter, a mentor, a husband, a father, a grandfather, and a great-grandfather. And for many, including me, he was a guiding light. He inspired me to become an attorney when I was still a child. And working alongside him years later was one of the greatest privileges of my career. He encouraged me in my public service and believed in the possibilities of this city. Tonight, we honor not just what Mr. Ferguson accomplished, but who he was. We hold his family in our hearts. We commit to walking forward with the same integrity, courage, and hope that defined his life. May James E. Ferguson II rest in peace and in power. Mayor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, for that incredible recognition. Feels a little strange to transition to the consent agenda at this point after that. Sorry? Okay. All right, Council, we do have a consent agenda. Are there any questions, comments, or a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I do have I wanted to put some sunshine on item M because I think otherwise people might not notice it. But staff have worked very hard to bring forward $39.35 million in funding that is in addition to the $225 million in the CDBG-DR funds. These are things that will help us to be more resilient in the future of climate change, which is a real serious threat in our community and as humanity. And I just wanted to make sure that we put some sunshine on that. And with that, I move to approve the consent agenda.
All right, thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Somebody who already has the, okay, thank you. We do not have anyone signed up to speak under this item, so council, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we've adopted the consent agenda, and now we're going to kick it into gear, low gear, right? No, we're for the manager's report. First, we're going to hear the Urban Land Institute Advisory Services Panel from the city manager, Deborah Campbell.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. We have 2 items under the manager's report this evening. The first one is going to be an update on the Urban Land Institute, or ULI, advisory panel event that is happening in our wonderful city this week. Steph Monson-Dahl is going to give that, and Steph is the director of our Planning and Urban Design Department. And before you come up, Steph, I want to take a moment to thank the mayor, the vice mayor, and other council members who were able to attend the kickoff dinner this past Sunday with ULI staff and panel members. I also want to just thank the Urban Land Institute for being here, but especially the Charlotte chapter, their staff of ULI, for helping to make this happen. Also want to thank our staff, City of Asheville staff, who have worked tirelessly to make this event happen and have done it in the midst of all the other things that they're working on. It's so far has been seamless and flawless, and I really, really appreciate you all's work. The second item is an update on the proposed structure for the Helene Recovery Boards and Commissions. Assistant City Manager Ben Woody will be providing information on a revised proposed structure that staff is recommending that council consider in terms of a path forward for boards and commissions. I will say, though, that staff believes this proposed structure is needed and that it will effectively and efficiently support the community's recovery efforts and enhance our interactions with advisory boards and commissions. So now I'll turn it over to Steph Monson-Dahl to give the first update. Thanks, Steph.
Thank you, City Manager Deborah Campbell. I am incredibly pleased to be able to present to you tonight a little status report about this thing that's not so little, really is a big part of how we're going to move forward in our community. We want you to understand when we're done with this presentation, not only who the Urban Land Institute Advisory Panel really is and what they do, but what they're doing here, maybe why it matters, and then also just some key dates, like what's next? How are we going to use this information? So the ULI Advisory Panel assists communities impacted by disasters and other communities that are not impacted by disasters, but providing impactful recommendations to address all manner of issues. When I say impactful, what I mean is these things are useful. They have a proven track record. They even have a proven track record here in the city of Asheville, and we can talk about that if you have questions about it. We are partnering with them to bring in 9 national land use and economic development experts from across the country to proactively address economic and environmental recovery after Tropical Storm Helene. And in particular, we're asking them to focus on how Asheville can balance both the economic development and growth that we know is going to naturally occur in our community. We need to think about what happens and where it goes. And the environmental protection and sustainability that we know we all, the community really wants and that council has prioritized, especially within those heavily impacted riverfront commercial districts. So the work on this panel will culminate with a public presentation this Friday, August 1st, and then I want to correct this. The final report is going to be available in the coming months. They will be giving us enough recommendations this Friday that we'll be able to start working with them immediately. We know that City Council spent time this year agenda setting and saying that this year recovery is our main concern, and we're thinking about 4 priority recovery areas: people, housing, infrastructure and environment, and the economy, with corresponding goals and objectives under each one of those. This initiative is looking primarily at infrastructure and environment and economy, although those of course have an impact and are interdependent with housing and our people goals. Not only have we shared what council's goals are in this area, we have let the ULI panel know that we've collected a lot of public input since the storm, and we need to think about it strongly. So here, this slide, what you're seeing is some of the infrastructure. It's not some of them. These are the main themes, actually, the key things that our public has said is important to them regarding infrastructure and environment. And you can see the connectivity when you think about stream bank and river restoration, but you also want to focus on improved stormwater flow and telecommunications, that these are big areas of focus. And our economy priorities that we've heard from public engagement are around small business support, workforce development, and of course, what defines us, arts and culture, the need for economic diversification, and then tying it back to infrastructure is this floodplain management question. We got all this information from 3 areas primarily. One is all the input that we did with the community in the CDBGDR action planning process. We also partnered with Buncombe County on the Envision Buncombe survey. That's for the long range, or the long-term recovery plan, rather. And then, of course, we had a priorities survey out before your annual agenda setting. All of those combined are how we summarize this kind of public engagement. While all those focus areas that we're talking about are important to think about from a regional perspective, we understand the interconnectivity of the watershed, but also our commute shed, our work shed. We have asked them to primarily look at 2 study areas, not the entire riverfront, but 2 areas that hold our most mixed-use development, and these are areas that we've heard from the community that people have the most questions about. Those are the Biltmore Village area and the Swannanoa corridor between Hendersonville Road and Tunnel Road, and the Greater River Arts District. So in addition to what people commonly think of as the core of the district, we're also including the French Broad Recreation area because so much of the commercial activity in that area is dependent on access to outdoor resources. And while we said that their main challenge is really to look at the balance of economic growth and environmental sustainability, we did give them a few more detailed questions to focus on, like how can we accelerate recovery and build resilience in Asheville's hospitality sectors. And those are industry sectors that had a harder time and are still having a harder time bouncing back after Tropical Storm Helene, while also thinking about long-term diversification and tools that we can use to support that business disruption that has happened, not just from Helene, but at other times recently, like in the pandemic. We're asking them to think about economic mobility, more inclusive opportunities for everyone. How do we enhance that, and how do we think about becoming more adaptable after the disaster? We're looking at real estate development policies, regulations, and incentives that can drive more resilient private development. And as we said, we need to balance that economic activity with the floodplain function. There's a competition for space out there. Lastly, we want to examine crucial public investments for flood resilience. This ties into the availability of CDBG DR funds for commercially flooded district, as well as some of our CIP needs moving forward. We have an aging stormwater infrastructure system, and we would like some ideas of how to take the public input, council's priorities, and these expert knowledge base that we're getting from these 9 folks that are visiting, and come out the other side with some recommendations. Here's a list of the panelists and staff that are here. Call it the lucky 13. 9 panelists, 4 staff that are helping us. You can see that they have a pretty wide and diverse understanding of all the subject areas that we need help in. We feel very lucky that we're here, and might I add that the conversations that they've been having with the community members and with staff have been really meaningful, and a lot of aha moments have taken place in the very short time that they've been here. So what has happened since they've been here? On Monday, staff was able to take folks out on a tour of the flooded riverfront commercial areas. We also spent some time in our central business district. Then last night, we had a meet and greet. About over 100 people showed up. It was an excellent activity. I'll talk about that more in a second. And today, about 80 people from the public served in small focus groups to provide additional information to the panelists before they start trying to put pen to paper. On Friday, as I mentioned, there's going to be this panel presentation of recommendations. And this isn't a 20-minute presentation. This is a 2-hour presentation where folks are going to be able to ask questions of the panelists so we can get a deeper understanding of what they're talking about, and folks from the community can really test some of their ideas and what they heard. Moving forward from that, we'll be coming to the Planning and Economic Development Environment Committee to review those recommendations and better understand how you might want to prioritize those, how you might see them fitting into our current plans and organizational work plans. And as I mentioned, that final report will be available probably in about November, but we can start working right away. So here's some photographs of the work so far, just to give you an idea of that tour that happened. There's about 35 people on that tour. Last night, we had 3 different interactivities for the public. Artist Jenny Fairs ran a positive sign making workshop, and she also had a Weave Your Gratitude wall. It was really successful and a great way for people to meet each other. Then we had a speed networking section of the meeting, which was a great way for people to meet the panelists. And then lastly, we had a wall where we put up not just the slides that you saw, but all of the engagement outcomes, the summarized key themes, what we heard, and we allowed people to sit and discuss those with staff so that we could each better understand what was missing. So again, Urban Land Institute is here, 9 panelists from across the country that are helping us look at issues like economic development and revitalization. They are focusing specifically on how we can recover from Tropical Storm Helene, and they will help us answer a main challenge around how do we balance economic growth, environmental sustainability, and management, especially within those riverfront corridors. And we'll be bringing you more information on this as we move forward. So Planning and Economic Development and Environment Committee first, and then once we get feedback from you, we know that the kind of recommendations that they're bringing will eventually make their way to council as actionable policies or projects. I'm here with a variety of other staff, including Rachel Taylor, our Economic Development Manager, Nikki Reed, our Community and Economic Development Director, and Ben Woody, our Assistant City Manager, to be able to answer any questions you might have, but I thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
There are no questions. We'll have Ben come up and talk about boards and commissions path forward.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. And I want to echo what Ms. Campbell said while I pull my slide deck up. Yes, it was a great evening last night, great activity, and just appreciate the staff and all the work they've done to put this together. It's really been phenomenal.
I'll share. I was at the Harris Center this morning, and it's just lots of hubbub and, lots of little tables of discussions. It just felt really good. And I know I sat through an interview with a couple colleagues, and it was a good discussion. I think I left feeling like I could have stayed all day and talked to them. So I'm glad that you all are getting this time with them and that they're able to help us in this way.
Great, thank you. And also a big thanks to our community who, as always, have been very engaged in the recovery process. So my name is Ben Woody, Assistant City Manager. I'm going to give council tonight a presentation on a proposal to establish Helene recovery boards and to restart advisory boards. So we've got a lot of key takeaways. I won't read all these to you, but I'll summarize. One thing I want to talk about to start the presentation off is about public participation and best practices, what that looks like and how advisory boards can align with those. Fountain Works is a firm that we hired to work with council to establish your recovery priorities at your retreat. Steph actually did a good job of kind of covering those in her presentation. What we're going to do tonight is talk about their recommendation to establish 4 Helene recovery boards to advance those priorities. When we get into this, I'll have some detail about the structure of these recovery boards. We've got a recommendation that the size be limited to 11, and then appointing the membership of those boards from existing advisory board membership and the general public. The Helene recovery boards, we are proposing that they be time limited. So they'll have an expiration date, so to speak, and you'll give them specific tasks to work on during that time period. And of course, we'd ask that their work align with your work plan and your priorities. And then I'm going to take a few minutes to talk about some of the existing boards that are outside of the advisory board structure that have restarted, that we're proposing to restart. And then finally, at the end of the presentation, we'll provide a proposal to restart the remaining advisory boards on an as-needed basis to support recovery priorities primarily. So we'll jump in. I just wanted to read a quote. This is adapted from the International Association of Public Participation. This is an organization that our communication and public engagement staff frequently rely on to design their public engagement. And real quickly, just to read it, effective public participation hinges on choosing the right level of engagement to match the goals, time frame, and context of the decision. Aligning technique with intention is essential, not just for meaningful input, but for building and maintaining public trust. And that is really a reflection of the approach I think we are proposing tonight, is to be intentional with how we use engagement for these really important issues the city faces in the coming years. So in the context of council recovery and your advisory boards, when advisory boards have community context, clear direction from you, the body that appoints them, we think this process can result in authentic dialogue, shared learning, and most importantly, representative outcomes that you can then consider as a policy-making board. Steph really segued well into this slide. Advisory boards are one way that we can engage with our community, but there, of course, are many ways that happens. That happens all the time in Asheville. It's happening right now with the ULI panel, and this is just an example of ways that the community can engage, and we're going to drill down on city council advisory boards tonight. So I think it's important to give a little context. The city of Asheville either participates or provides staff support for 41 boards. I don't know that everybody always realizes that, but there's 41 boards that the city of Asheville is connected with. They can be categorized into 4 categories: autonomous boards, quasi-judicial, administrative, and advisory. We're going to spend most of our time on advisory boards. There are 15 of those that are currently staffed by city employees. The existing 15 advisory boards are listed on this slide. I want to note there are 2, the Citizens Police Advisory Committee and the Recreation Board, that currently do not have current members and are not meeting. So prior to Helene, you had 13 council-appointed advisory boards that were actively meeting. So let's talk about Helene recovery boards. And this is based off, again, Fountain Works, who worked with council on your retreat. They developed a proposal to establish advisory boards focused on recovery. And so this is what that could look like if council would like to move forward. These are your recovery priorities. One thing that we did, I want to note, is infrastructure and environment. We have a grouped environment with the people priority to kind of allow for the work to be distributed amongst these 4 recovery boards. There's a lot of work to be done in infrastructure and environment. So what this would look like, the purpose of a Helene Recovery Board, which is very similar to your typical advisory boards, is they are a critical sounding board for the city council and can help foster a more responsive and effective local government. I think this is an important bullet. Advisory board members provide expertise, they represent the community, and they ultimately develop policy recommendations on items that come to council for consideration or action. And then finally, advisory boards under this proposal would be given work plans from council committees. There is alignment between the work the advisory board would perform with your work plans, and ultimately that supports and advances the FY26 City Council priority recovery areas. So this is hyper-focused on your priorities and how to advance those. Structure, what we have discussed and are recommending is that there are no more than 11 members for each recovery board, so that would be a total of 44 spread across 4 boards. From your existing pool of advisory boards, the chair and vice chair or their designee would each serve on 1 advisory board. So there would be two advisory boards represented by the Affordable Housing Committee, for example. What that does, it puts 6 to 7 existing advisory board members on each recovery board. That leaves you as council 4 to 5 additional members to appoint through a process. So you could round out each of the 4 recovery boards with appointments. I think that gives you the opportunity to make sure those boards are representative of different stakeholders and different disciplines as they move forward. These 4 recovery boards would be fully supported by staff. Meetings would be accessible to the public. And finally, their work plans will be based on your council committee assignments and needs. So just some examples, and I think you saw a lot of this again on the slides that Steph shared with us earlier. These are projects that are from the City of Asheville's organizational work plan, and you can see on this slide how those projects can align with recovery priorities and even how they align with council committees. So this is just a reflection of the types of activities that Helene recovery boards could be involved with and make recommendations to council on. I'm not going to read this slide because there's a lot of information, but again, we talked about having membership from advisory boards, participate on recovery boards. This is what that could look like. So you'll find each of the active 13 advisory boards with appointment to 2 of the recovery boards. We tried our best to align this with work that the advisory boards have historically done or with recovery projects that most closely connect to that advisory board. So that's Helene recovery boards. That's a lot of information. I'll just stop there to see if there are any questions on the proposal to establish those 4 Helene recovery boards.
Are you going to do another part of the presentation?
I am going to do another
All
part,
right,
so
I'll
we can
wait
also
till you
wait to the end. Okay. So let's talk about the existing advisory boards. So before I get into the 13 council-appointed advisory boards, I want to cover these. There are 4 quasi-judicial boards. They do very specific things based on statutory requirements. These 4 have actually been meeting since early in 2025, so they're already meeting. We just want to formally say, yes, go ahead and continue meeting as quasi-judicial boards. There are also 6 boards that are very technical in nature, or they allocate funding. They're really not advisory boards to council. 3 of those boards actually are meeting fairly regularly through special meetings. The other 3 don't meet that often. We would propose to allow these 6 technical boards to go ahead and resume their regular meeting schedules. So that brings us back to the 15 advisory boards, again, 13 of which have been active. Make a quick note on this slide. We don't have the subcommittees listed, but some of these boards do have subcommittees that operate underneath the umbrella of the advisory board. So I just want to note that as information. So the proposed structure is the first thought on the existing advisory boards is they would meet when they're assigned a task from city council, a council committee, or staff. Advisory boards would be given a task from one of those entities. They would then proceed to work on that and bring information back to whoever assigned it, whether it's city council or a council committee. What this does, it ensures alignment of the work of the advisory board with the council priorities, which also ensures kind of balancing limited staff resources to provide support. And I'll just note, resources include staff time, it includes budget, it includes consulting time. So this is the idea that we work together, advisory boards, recovery boards, staff, council, to accomplish tasks that have been set forth to us. Other way is, of course, there are times, certainly going to be times when advisory boards want to propose new tasks. We want to have a process for that to occur as well. Here are a couple of pathways that could happen. Number one, and I think the most direct way, is every advisory board will have membership on the Helene recovery boards. So that's always an avenue to bring forward new tasks, new information, ideas. The other way is, much of the way that a lot of folks do, is sharing that information through council committees, through council meetings, and even directly with you as individual council members. So next steps, and we'll have a question slide next, is moving forward, staff will begin developing an engagement, administrative, and legal framework to establish the new recovery, Helene recovery boards, as well as the proposed advisory board structure. We'd like to bring that to council for your discussion at the August 21st agenda briefing. Following that, we would like to bring a resolution to council on August 26th to establish the 4 Helene recovery boards and to move forward with a new framework for the existing advisory boards. And once all that's in place, that lets us to begin the appointment or an application process to populate these boards and start turning them back on. Questions? Discussion?
Guess what? I got something on this one. I just want to say that I know many of my colleagues, including myself, served on advisory boards before we were on council. It is an amazing way to learn how the government works, what our processes are like, how to read government documents, and it's an amazing leadership incubator. But it's also, for me, an incredible asset. Guess what? I don't know everything about everything. But when we invite our neighbors to bring their professional and lived experience to the table, we can make better decisions as a council. However, we've not always done a great job communicating back and forth. So today I saw top down, bottom up. But I think what we have an opportunity to do in this moment is think about it more like an ecosystem. If I, when I was on the transit committee and multimodal, had any clue what council's work plan was and was invited to participate meaningfully in it, it would have been such a big help. Instead, every year we would go into a retreat and figure out why we showed up, surely because we cared. What were we going to do for the year? How do we narrow it? And I hope if we do all this work that council will do something about it. I mean, will they hear us? So I think a two-way communication system is sorely needed. And I think that's been seen through the realignment work group's recommendations. And yet we have this huge situation with not enough staff to do way too much work. So I have a position and I have a recommendation. In addition to confirming a path forward for existing advisory boards, we have a generous proposal from the realignment work group to support our advisory board's ability to meet. Acknowledging staff capacity through recovery from Helene, the benefits of the realignment work group's proposal to me include 1, A proven track record of 3 years of the realignment work group who have successfully noticed their own public meetings through the clerk's office. They have engaged current and former advisory board members, compiled data, brought forward recommendations to better utilize the invaluable resource of our advisory boards. I'm glad, and two, to see that CPAC and Parks and Rec are here, because they haven't met since 2020. However, today we see that the Transit Committee and Active Transportation Committee under MMTC, multimodal, are not included in the staff proposal for a path forward. And yet these boards, in addition to CPAC and Parks and Rec, fit both our core services as well as our recovery goals of people, infrastructure, economy, and housing. And number three, our advisory boards represent volunteers that we, your city council, appointed for their professional and lived experience. So while it may seem like a lot of work to allow them to meet, the volunteers of the realignment work group are offering essentially volunteer clerk support to expand our capacity. So while I appreciate staff's bringing a path forward instead of following through with the formal dispersal, that's huge. I also expect we will begin to hear frequent requests for our advisory boards to meet. And so I think we should direct staff to accept the generous offer from the realignment work group to support these meetings alongside the clerk. And if you need to get to a majority of council members to make that direction to accept this generous proposal, count me as one. Thank you.
Ben, did you have anything else that you wanted? Okay, did you, any other? This is, we're not up for a vote, this is just for our presentation tonight.
It's just for information, and we appreciate the feedback that we got, Councilmember Roney. And you all saw the timeline. We'll come back with the agenda briefing in August, and then there would be a potential resolution for the August business meeting.
Yes. Of which there's only one.
And yes, there's only one meeting in August. Yes, ma'am.
I'll share a couple thoughts just quickly. And I'll echo my original concerns I voiced at our last, I think it was a work session maybe a month ago, ahead of a council meeting where we worked just on this. And I still have some concerns. I'm looking for the exact language here where we'll just take from the chairs and vice chairs or a suitable appointment if they decline, I guess is what that means. And I just want to echo some concerns around that and whether or not that will make up a well-diverse kind of group of people that can take on these decisions. And I think sometimes we have chairs and vice chairs that take on that role for administrative reasons. They can run a good meeting or something, but maybe they have a different skill set or someone else on the committee may be better in these seats. So I'm still open to broader ways to assign folks to those seats. We did get the data of the current chairs and vice chairs, and I need to look that over, but I hold those concerns. And I know I saw in the public comment later at the end of the meeting, I see Stacy here and some folks in the lineup are going to talk about this and share some more input. And I saw the recommendation that was emailed as well, and I appreciate that. It was slightly different than what we had discussed, and that I didn't realize there was a goal for the working group to really just take on the management of these advisory committees. I didn't realize that was on the table, and it just sounds like a big lift, and I'm a little hesitant. I'd need to hear more, so I guess we'll hear in your 10 minutes later, but what?
On that, while it is a big lift, I think staff has discussed that option and doesn't feel it's an option. And
Well, maybe
they
for
can
legal
explain more.
reasons. I was kind of curious
Yeah,
myself, I just didn't know that was part of the request, so I'm not ready to support, as Councilwoman Roney just brought up, I'm not ready to support that tonight. It's not what I had understood was on the table, but I hope we'll hear more about it. Overall, though, I'm glad that we're looking at this process. I, too, served on a large number of these committees, several that are on this list that would become advisory only, and I think there were struggles amongst those committees at times of were they investing their time and getting the return? Was council hearing their voices and hearing their efforts? And you know, I hope that this can lead to more of that, not less of that, and a better process. So I don't see it as a way we're backing off of it. I'm hoping that a better process comes from it and that people that are involved feel like they have more direct input, but you know, just some goals along the side, and I guess we'll hear more from folks later.
I continue to have deep concerns, as well as the newest elected folk to the body, I really value as much advisement and feedback and information as possible. And I also echo Councilmember Turner's, I don't know if it should just be the vice chair and chair. I think we should look at a broader group of folk. And maybe not if we don't adopt fully the realignment working group proposal, maybe there is a compromise or some way we could collaborate in another way. I think right now people just feel like government at all levels just isn't listening. And I think the more we can draw folks in and get their feedback and engagement, the better.
Thank you for that feedback, but I just want to remind you all that there are 4 or 5 other appointments that you all can make, and those can come from those existing advisory boards. Just wanted to,
But only from those
At that-
advisory boards?
they can come from
Okay.
anywhere.
No, those are
Anywhere. I'm
community
saying they
ones.
could
Okay.
if you.
Which I
right.
think helps the process.
And
Thank you.
sometimes I think one of the challenges that we're facing right here is just a logistical challenge. Like, how do you
How
even
long?
orchestrate, you know, how, if you're gonna have the chair and vice chair or their designee on the committee, it's just kind of a simplified system to put these committees together, and just trying to figure out how to orchestrate something different is pretty tricky. That's all. I mean, it's easy to say, well, I'd like this or I'd like that, but it's just for staff sits there and says, well, how in the world do we implement this? And then it doesn't happen, like nothing happens. And so I don't want nothing to happen because we can't, we have paralysis, what do they call that?
Analysis paralysis.
Paralysis. Right, thank you.
What about at the end of the process? Like at the end of the 2 years or 18 months, what happens?
We'll be working through that.
We start again, we do this?
We'll be working through that. There will be, I'm sure, lots of lessons learned. Again, what we truly want to achieve is relevance. We want us all rowing in the same direction, talking about the same things. It's so much more efficient, and I humbly would suggest to you a lot more impactful for our community. And we work together.
Does anyone on staff, can anyone on staff address the question of why can't we just have a community volunteer group support advisory boards and take it out of the work scope of the staff? I mean, we got to have public notice for meetings, we have to have minutes, we have to have public comment, we have to have meeting space, we have to have all those things. Why can't we just say, here you go,
Stacy,
volunteers, do this part?
If I could ask Brad to talk about kind of some of the legal things, and then
Okay.
Maggie, I don't know if you or Ben want to talk to some of the other logistics.
Yeah, happy to do so, Council. So, Mayor, to respond to your question, at least from a legal perspective, all of these bodies are what the law refers to as public bodies, which means they fall under the same open meetings law that this council operates under. There are then certain requirements that those bodies have to meet, not just each time they notice a meeting, but throughout the course of the meeting itself. Because of this, the city takes great pains not only to provide legal counsel to the vast majority of these bodies each and every time they meet, but we also help train our city staff and the liaisons from staff, as well as the chairs and the vice chairs, to be able to conduct these meetings. These are not just rules that we hope people follow. There are actual legal risk and consequences if we fail to follow those, even inadvertently, fail to follow every single rule. The reality is, at the end of the day, it is not the board themselves or its members who might be liable, it is the city. So we keep a very close watch on this, not only because of the potential liability out there for the city, but because we believe that the integrity of the process requires it. So it has always been important for us to ensure that there is a legal safety net in place for this. Providing that access to the community essentially would break that and place not just the obligation to answer legal questions as they arose, but also maintain that liability for the city if any of the rules are, again, even inadvertently broken. So there is concern for us about that. Certainly, you can get it right 9 out of 10 times, and the 10th time may be problematic. So there is some concern for us about that. Now, if the external community groups were willing to manage that, I suspect they would still need to interact regularly with city staff, not just from the various departments, to be able to provide information, to answer questions, to serve as a link to city staff, but also the city attorney's office to answer legal questions as they arose. So we feel that although there would be some additional support, a lot of the staffing capacity and resources that are in place right now would still end up being necessary. And the less that was provided, the less engagement there happened to be, we fear that there may be a further divergence away from what council has asked city staff to focus on, which are the priorities you've adopted. So those are just our concerns. We're certainly not saying that it is impossible to make that happen, but this is part of the calculus we've used to come up with the proposal that staff has put together for you.
Anyone
And-
have any questions for Brad about this, the outside help concept?
And then if we're going to continue with if we turn on all 13, have 4 more that's Helene Recovery, we're supporting 17.
Yeah, we went in the wrong direction.
We
We went in the wrong direction.
Yeah. Anything else you all want to add? Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. That concludes presentations and reports. And it's before 6 o'clock. Good job. Okay.
We're doing our best.
Mass exodus of the staff. Goodbye. Okay, we have one item on our public hearings agenda. There is a request to continue the Springside Road matter. So if you're here for the Springside Road matter, which I didn't see anyone, well, anyway, if you tried to sign up, they would have told you we're not hearing it tonight. So do I have a quick motion to continue the Springside Road matter to August 26th?
So moved.
Oh, go ahead.
Councilwoman Roney moved and Councilwoman Turner seconded it. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, now Will Palmquist is slowly making his way up the aisle because he is going to talk to us about an item that was continued from last council meeting, so we're not taking further public comment on it tonight, and that is the 99999 Trade Street from rezoning Trade Street from River Arts Forum District Neighborhood Transition RAD-NT to RM8 Residential Multifamily Medium Density District. And Will, before we begin, I'd like you to know that the ULI experts informed us today that we have a lot of zoning districts in
sure
the
do.
River Arts District. Apparently an abnormally large number of zoning districts per their expert opinion.
I'm glad it's not just me. Good evening, Mayor and members of council. Will Palmquist, Planning Urban Design. I'll be presenting this rezoning petition for 99999 Trade Street. So just a refresher on the site, outlined in red here is the subject property located in the core River Arts District. As you recall, the last meeting, the area of concern and unknown ownership that we'll talk more about is located in this strip of land to the east of the subject property. The existing zoning is the RAD-NT Neighborhood Transition Zone, and the request by the applicant is to rezone it to the residential multifamily medium-density RM8 district. The existing future land use is traditional neighborhood. No change in that would be required. Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of the rezoning at its June 4th meeting. At your last council meeting on June 24th, it was brought to our attention there were some concerns from the neighboring property owner about the ownership of that sliver of property between the subject property and that other person's property. We have since been in communication with both representatives of those two properties. It continues to be discussed and worked out. We have decided on a path forward that would essentially, if the rezoning were to be approved, the ordinance would not be adopted or put in effect until that ownership issue was settled. Here are a couple charts outlining the major differences between the RAD-NT and the RM8 district. The main differences regarding the allowed uses is that the RAD-NT does not allow for single-family or duplexes, where the RM8 does. There are also a number of form code requirements in the RAD-NT, such as build-to zones, window requirements, and sidewalks that the RM8 does not have. So the major pro identified by staff in this rezoning is that it would allow for, it would make the zoning consistent with the larger Weekend neighborhood to the east of the subject property, which is already zoned RM8. A few cons identified would be a reduction in the diversity of allowed land uses, removal of the form code elements, and then shifting the kind of boundary line to the west and north specifically, where the height is reduced to a maximum of 3 stories and 45 feet, where it's adjacent to RAD-NT zoning. So in regards to the compatibility of the rezoning, staff finds that it's compatible with the surrounding land uses, which include the RM8 zone property to the east and south, and the RAD-NT zone property to the west and south of the property. Rezoning would also be consistent with Living Asheville Comprehensive Plan, specifically the traditional neighborhood future land use designation, which also includes RM8 as a acceptable or appropriate zoning district within that future land use category. The rezoning would also support goals of the plan, such as to increase and diversify the housing supply and to celebrate the unique identity of neighborhoods through creative placemaking. Therefore, staff concurs with the Planning and Zoning Commission and recommends approval of the proposed rezoning, with the caveat that, if approved, would not become effective until the ownership issue has been fully resolved. Glad to answer any questions you may have.
Will, is this parcel next to a parcel that we did a similar change in zoning on? I'm looking at the aerial.
Not to
and
my
I thought,
knowledge. So as far as like the RAD
was it further
rezoning.
down? Okay.
So
I was wondering
the,
if it was that structure next to it that was just
yeah,
built.
so this
Okay.
is kind of the line here. Everything to the east was presumably already zoned RM8 back when the RAD zoning took effect a number of years ago. So that is kind of the boundary line is right along that area of unknown ownership.
No, I was thinking of a different property, but it's not the one I thought. Okay, and I guess my next question is for Brad, and I just would love a little of your legal expertise. Can you go back to the uses and what they would become? So is it because, how is this not down zoning? Because all those other uses are still allowed? We're just adding in a down zoned option?
So the most important thing to remember about downzoning is you can't unilaterally impose it on anyone. Not to say that this is or is not downzoning, but anybody who agrees to be downzoned, if this is the characterization, can do that. So the applicant has essentially signed off on this particular request. So by way of that consent, council has the ability to approve or not approve without concern.
It's just that we're restricted. The public is still allowed.
You-
Big difference.
Yeah, exactly. The restriction is on council itself when you do not have the approval or agreement of the property owner.
Interesting. I wasn't able to attend the last meeting, and was this just continued because of the ownership issue?
Correct.
Okay.
I thought it failed for lack of a motion and second.
I was wondering that too. Okay.
Yeah, I can speak to that. There was, I can't remember if there was a motion or not. There was definitely not a second, so it was not moved forward. However, before the matter fully failed for lack of any movement from council, the request was made to continue it, and council then made a motion to continue instead.
Is there any known potential additional land once the I-26 connector project finishes where it says not zoned on the map? Because that's going to be that new supposed multi-use path and a huge accessibility point for downtown.
So in regards to the future zoning of those potential properties and how this might impact that, it's hard to say. It would, as far as adjacency goes, the only properties that are impacted as regarding the limitation of height since it would be adjacent to the RM district that's proposed, is the property directly to the north and the property directly to the west of the subject property. These other properties would not be affected by their adjacency since they don't directly touch those properties, depending on how they're drawn up, if and how, and then whatever future zoning they might have. So does that answer your question?
In a way.
Okay.
I still find myself with the same opinion because the previous decisions that we made were just a block away. And I re-walked this the other day, and I'll restate it, that I'm not inclined to downzone any of the properties on this area for two reasons. One, it's within a half a mile of some of the most frequent and late-night transit service in the city, and it removes the sidewalk requirements, which that street is a cut-through and on the way to the River Arts District infrastructure, and sidewalks are surely needed. So my no will be reflecting that consistency.
It was a block away.
It was down on, it faced Roberts, I thought. It was down on Roberts.
Okay. Oh, Roberts.
Yeah. I feel like the only street in that neighborhood that has a sidewalk is, would it be Park Avenue? Maybe.
Sounds right. And of course, with this, we didn't actually receive an intention of the development from the applicant, right? They didn't deliver what they intended to build.
That's correct. This is not what you often see, which is a conditional zoning that comes with a very specific site plan. This is what we call a straight rezoning, just moving from one zoning categorization to another, which means council should consider all of the potential uses because they could do any one of those by right.
I guess it throws in potential for short-term rental too.
I don't believe that that would be the case, Councilmember Turner, simply because in light of the city's 2018 ordinance, only properties that had that right vested prior to that ordinance would be able to utilize short-term rental on these properties.
Well, but I see duplex, so I'm seeing adjacent living quarters with kitchen rented by neighbor adjacent, you know what I mean? Like there's, that
It would
happens.
still be prohibited. So they would still be subject to our ordinance that would allow long-term rental, but not under 30 days.
Looks like the developers, did you want to? You're done, Will, with your part. You're sitting down until somebody asks you. Yes.
Good evening, Derek Allen. I do represent the applicant in this matter, and obviously we think it's a natural break point in it, and wanted to add, if the RAD-NT did allow for single-family homes, then we wouldn't be here, and it doesn't. And so it feels like a down zone, but it's actually providing the option that makes the most sense for this property, which is all up and down a single-family detached dwelling street.
I don't have any more questions. I just am not sensing a lot of support up here. I don't know if it's cold or me.
I'm ready to make a motion. You want me to make a motion?
Sure.
I move to approve the zoning request for the property located at 99999 Trace Street from River Arts Forum District neighborhood transition to residential multifamily medium-density RM8, and find that the request is reasonable, is in the public interest, is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, and meets the development needs of the community, in that the request, one, promotes zoning policies to encourage more housing, and two, supports contextually appropriate infill development and a variety of housing types. This ordinance shall be effective only upon the verification by the city that all of the real property described in section 1 of this ordinance and shown on the zoning map, which is the subject of this rezoning, is owned by Brunis LLC or its assigns.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other questions, comments? Everybody ready to vote? Ready? Okay. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed, please raise your hand. Okay. Thank you. That concludes the public hearing portion of our agenda. Sorry, it was kind of anticlimactic. All right, now we're going to move into our general public comment period. Everybody, you will have 3 minutes to speak. Please watch the lights on the lectern. Green means go, orange means getting ready to stop, and red, and it makes a beeping sound, means stop, and Maggie's in charge of the clock, so if anything goes wrong, she did it. Everybody, during our general public comment, there are some folks that have ceded their time to somebody else so that individual can speak for 10 minutes, up to 10 minutes. 3 people will have ceded their time. Those people that have ceded their time will need to be here and just sort of raise their hand when I call their name. And then they will not obviously be able to speak because they're ceding their time to the one person. Please keep in mind, we do have council rules of decorum, and to please keep your comments civil and respectful, and generally that's what happens. So that's great. We want to keep that rolling. All right. Everybody ready? Yes, we're all ready. Okay. So the first person signed up to speak is Steve Arpin.
Well, I wanted to speak about saving the woods. I think it's a really bad idea to go through with this development. Tonight, we're talking about trying to recover from Helene. This concrete would make what we're talking about tonight, it would have been a lot worse. From what I understand, listening to geologists, when it rains, 90% of the water that doesn't go to evaporation or taken up by plants goes into groundwater, not to streams. Covering this with cement would put it all into the stream. So I think it's an ecological disaster. Some information that I came across recently surprised me. I thought they could go ahead and the city would have to provide water and the county would have to provide sewer. That doesn't seem to be the case at all. There was a lower court case, the city of Randleman versus Myrtle Hinshaw, decided September 18, 1968. There was a Supreme Court case, Fulham, F-U-L-G-H-U-M, versus the town of Selma, decided June 12, 1953. And in both those cases, the court said that cities and counties are under no obligation to provide utilities, they call them, to any place outside their jurisdiction. This place is outside our jurisdiction. We do not have to provide them with anything. This would be a disaster. Then these people do not pay taxes. Not only do we have this threat in the city of more flooding, we have to pay their bills year after year. So they don't pay for roads, they don't pay for schools. If there's an overhaul of the stormwater system or the water delivery system, we pay for that with our taxes. I mean, they pay, if they're using water, but where is the gain? And when I looked up the economic record of soccer stadiums, it's not good. It doesn't do anything for the local economy. The money that gets spent there, they're saying just would have been spent somewhere else. This is a loss all the way around. And I think you were saying about people thinking the government doesn't listen. When I was passing out flyers in my neighborhood, everyone practically that I talked with, maybe like 97%, were against this and are extremely upset about it. And this is a chance for government to listen. There's nothing to gain from this. And city council can say, no, we're not delivering you water. We're not providing you with roads for the citizens to pay your share of the expenses. When I looked up justice in my Black's Law Dictionary, one of the categories of justice is distributive justice. And part of that is sharing the burdens equally. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so if you like a speaker, no clapping, but you can kind of, yay, there you go. If you don't, you can, okay, so Sean Fairstein. I just went with the way I do the EI in my name, so sorry if I got that wrong.
Good afternoon, Council. I speak to you on a issue that I think you've all heard very well of. Sunday marked 10 months since Tropical Storm Helene brought unprecedented devastation to Asheville and our surrounding area. As an operational meteorologist working in the private sector, I spent the prior several days ceaselessly informing and preparing my company's clients for the imminent threat from Florida to here in North Carolina. The level of destruction to our area in Asheville and to much of our surrounding area was much greater than I and my fellow meteorologists had ever anticipated. I was left with a troubling thought. I spent so much time working to cater to the specific private interests of our clients. Did I do everything that I could have to prepare in my duty and authority to serve my own community? Today, a new threat seeks to destroy a small but irreplaceable part of our community. For decades, a 54-acre mature oak hickory forest in UNCA's South Campus, colloquially known as UNCA Woods, or just simply Woods to neighbors, has served as an unofficial park and nature preserve. It provides recreation, connection, self-discovery, scientific research, and ecological importance and climate resilience to neighbors, residents, UNCA faculty, UNCA students, and local wildlife. However, last Thursday, the UNC Board of Governors approved UNCA's 99-year lease to private development to destroy the small piece of our community for a 5,000-seat soccer stadium and mixed-use development. This project serves only a specific set of private interests. UNCA's lack of transparency, combined with its indifference bordering on contempt to refuse to address the reasonable concerns of tens of thousands of Asheville residents over the past 6 months, has been atrocious. However, unlike Helene, this destruction is not inevitable or unstoppable. As a meteorologist, I have an authority and duty to serve my community and our stakeholders. As elected public servants, you also have a duty and authority to fulfill the mandate of the people that you serve. Thus, I know what you're thinking. Asheville, the city of Asheville does not have jurisdiction over the property of this. It's owned by the state. We hear your concerns, but there's nothing we can do. But I must ask, are you doing everything in your power that you possibly can? Sometimes I feel like I didn't 10 months ago, but I don't want this council to commit the same mistake. Thus, I urge the council to adopt a resolution condemning the approval of this proposed development and to partner with the county commissioners as well as community members to find a viable and better alternate site for this stadium. That way, we do not see the destruction of our precious UNCA Woods. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is Stacy Anderson, and she has 10 minutes because she has 3 people here to yield their time to her. And they are Alan Exovitz, who I see, Nina Tovish, yes, and Patrick Conant. Thank you. Can you pull that microphone? No, I'm not saying you're short. I'm just saying.
I know I am. It's no surprise. Good evening. My name is Stacy Anderson. I'm a resident of the city, representing the Realignment Working Group. My colleagues are here with me, as you just saw. Thank you, Mayor Manheimer, council members, and City Manager Deborah Campbell for the time. Late last week, you all received a proposal from the Realignment Working Group, grassroots advocates that have been analyzing and evaluating the city's boards and commissions for 3.5 years. Okay, just to correct you. Our work started when the first proposal to eliminate most of the committees was floated. The proposal we distributed in this product is the product of intense and broad research derived from committee members, staff liaisons, and other city staff. And we appreciate the cooperation of city staff in this work. A few weeks ago, most of the chairs and vice chairs of the 15 dormant committees gathered to hear the proposal from Fountainworks, an outside consulting firm who is working with council on their new strategic plan and priorities. Fountainworks presented a new recommendation for Asheville boards and commissions, although one that was eerily similar to the proposal from 3 years ago. In light of the concern raised at that meeting, We have also shared this proposal with several of the chairs and vice chairs of those committees, many of whom agree with the intent of our proposal presented. In the aftermath of Hurricane Helene, the city of Asheville faces an immense task: rebuilding a more resilient, equitable, and thriving community. Understandably, the city leadership is exploring ways to streamline operations during the intense recovery period. One such consideration, suspending regular advisory board meetings for up to 2 years, may seem pragmatic given limited staff capacity. However, we believe the approach would be a critical misstep at a time when inclusive, participatory, community-informed governance is more vital than ever. Advisory boards are not peripheral. They are foundations to Asheville's democratic process. They amplify community voices, they generate innovative ideas, and help ensure that public decisions reflect the lived realities of residents. Halting their regular operations risks eroding the very civic infrastructure that can help guide an effective, equitable recovery. Why does this matter? If boards meet only when they are specifically tasked by council, many will become inactive. Inactivity will not be neutral. It will trigger real losses. Loss of community engagement and public trust, loss of institutional knowledge and volunteer momentum, loss of demographic diversity among board members, loss of proactive insight into emerging community needs. Furthermore, the $225 million in anticipated recovery-related funding represents an unprecedented opportunity. To ensure these investments address both immediate and long-term needs, public input must be part of every step, not sidelined until it's convenient. For council and staff, we are proposing a low-burden, high-impact solution. We are not asking city staff to carry the burden alone. The Boards and Commissions Realignment Working Group proposes a practical, no-cost, volunteer-driven solution that ensures all currently active boards and any others reconstituted during recovery can continue to meet regularly without adding to staff workload. Our team offers to coordinate and support meetings, scheduling, public access, agendas, hybrid tools, and documentation. To ensure alignment of councils and committees' priorities, priority identification, work plans, and plans of action, streamlined communication, centralized calendars, shared drives, email groups, and public updates. Facilitate compliance and training on ethics, open meetings, work plans, and virtual facilitation. Collaborate flexibly with staff, welcoming review and input when possible, and any additional training of the Realignment Working Group to meet any city requirements. Our model maintains transparency, honors North Carolina's open meeting laws, and strengthens public accessibility. And knowing the constraints of the city budget now, and probably for several years in the future, we offer this service at no cost. What does Asheville gain by accepting this proposal? The city will keep a broader spectrum of residents engaged in recovery and rebuilding, maintain momentum and preserve institutional knowledge across boards, equip council and staff with diverse, informed community perspectives, and begin laying the groundwork for a more efficient, equitable boards and commissions system that will outlast the recovery phase. We can share the load together. This is not a moment to narrow the circle of governance. It is a moment to expand it strategically and sustainably. We stand ready to do our part. We respectfully urge City Council and staff to adopt this proposal, empowering Asheville's advisory boards to remain active partners in recovery. We welcome the opportunity to meet and discuss how this plan can be implemented swiftly and effectively. Thank you all for your continued leadership. We are ready to walk beside you in this work.
Thank you. All right. Okay. The next person signed up to speak is Jennifer Hyde.
Hello. I have a whole bunch of questions, and I just want to start by saying I wish for a future in which city council meetings, rather than having timed monologues, actually engaged in dialogue and you responded to our concerns directly. As for my questions, I'm wondering why nobody has signed the Save the Woods resolution. I'm wondering what part of the resolution y'all cannot get on board with. I know that folks on city council have written another resolution, and I'm wondering when the public will get to read it and why we cannot read it right now. I noticed that Maggie is not here, and I hope that her responsibilities include reading the minutes of the public comments so that she's informed of what's happening here. I've seen several of y'all at Save the Woods events speaking out in support of protecting them, and I'm wondering when your actions will match your words. It takes 3 people to get an action item on the docket, and I'm wondering why Save Our Woods resolution is not on the docket today, and when will it be? The previous chancellor had a plan to build on the piece of UNC land on Broadway, and I would love transparency. I think we would all love transparency around what happened to that plan and why this other one is being pushed forward. And to those who have not even expressed verbal support, I'm wondering what it will take to defend the woods, as this is a no-brainer. Environmental preservation versus a financial deal that is highly opposed by students, faculty, and community members alike. I've heard continuous comments from both city council members and the UNC chancellor and board members. They are listening, but the entire process continues to remain behind closed doors against the wishes of vast majority of affected community members. This entire process breaks our trust and only steals our resolve, and we are not going away. The current Save Our Woods petition has over 14,000 signatures, and over 90,000 letters have been written to the Board of Governors. Your lack of action is being noticed by voters and will affect voter choices in the next election. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Howell is signed up as our next speaker and has 3 people ceding their time. Sekou and Nina Butrago. Yep, back there. Yes, yes. And Tim Boss. Okay, thank you.
That night is already going.
Mr. Howell, I don't think we've ever had 10 minutes before. All right.
I don't know if you want me to have 10 minutes, but we're going to give it to you. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, city attorney, city manager, assistant city manager, Ben, and the glue that holds everything together, Maggie. I was asked the other day when I was told I was going to come to city council why I never have nothing good to say or say thank y'all for what y'all do. And I told the people that I do not have a feces fetish. I do not come up here to thank y'all for myself or nobody else in this city for being shitted on like y'all shit on us.
No swearing, please, Mr. Howell.
Shit is still that word. Remember.
Come on, we want to hear what you have to say.
I'm
please.
saying it, but you stopping you interfering my time. Shit has already been established as a proceeding to be used in council by the vice mayor about toilets. So shit is acceptable. I just say shit and then I add Ted to it at the end. Okay, but like I was saying, there's a whole lot of issues that I'd like to talk about, but I really can't because I just have maybe 8 minutes now. So I'm gonna start right here with Walton Pool. which was 83 years old at its closing, I guess. And I see that back in 1986, concerns were raised about the pool by City Councilor Wilhelmina Bratton. And I see since then, Priscilla Nadine Robinson, lifelong resident of Asheville, has advocated for more than a decade to save the pool. Also, the residents of Walton Street had been advocating for years addressing the condition of the pool's lack of repairs. So, I looked around and come 2015, a strong push for repair gained momentum, including a petition, public calls for renovation, and support from Asheville City Council. But then I turn around and see in 2021 the Asheville City Council voted to close the pool due to infrastructure problems. Note, Marvin Hills Pool. Instead of renovating the pool for $1.3 million, y'all approved plans to build a $1.5 million wading puddle at Grant Center that everyone and their grandma can see isn't no swimming pool unless there's only 10 kids in it. This thing was celebrated for replacing a swimming pool that accommodated 50, 60, 70 kids and adults with everyone having room to swim. In 2022, City of Asheville invested $500,000 in Walton Street Park for resurfacing the ball court, modernizing the playground, and converting the ball field. While this year, telling us to reimagine Walton Pool. Now, if this isn't being Ted on, what is? Okay, Marvin Hills, the cost to renovate Marvin Hills Pool, 90 years old, estimated at $1.5 million, with some reaching $3 million. Initial repairs were $400,000 till contractors indicated that further repairs would likely uncover additional issues with the pool's infrastructure. So what is the city doing? The city is developing a comprehensive parks and recreation plan which will help determine the future of the pool and other park improvements. A $20 million bond referendum, which included funding the pool, passed in November. Again, who's being teared on? I like to see the look on your face. You go out your way to save and restore a 90-year-old pool while making it your business to shut down and remove one that's 83 years old. Why is that? Anyhow, y'all want us to help y'all remove more of our history with watermelon-eating smiles on our face and a piece of fried chicken in our hands cheering y'all on. I'm not one of those people to do that. What I'm telling y'all is that y'all's lack of leadership has left us poolers for a long, hot summer. Shitting on everyone. Okay, y'all say we need to reimagine Walton Pool. I'd say y'all need to reimagine City Council with y'all being on it. If Walton Pool isn't renovated just as Marvin Hills, there's no place for y'all, because y'all not doing nothing for us. Let's have some time. I wanted to speak on the woods, but I believe there's enough people here to speak on the woods. So I will say what little time I have left. I continue to see more unaffordable housing being built, and I continue to see more people out here homeless on the streets with mental conditions, with addictions and all that stuff, and there's nothing being done for them. Yet we got plenty of time to build unaffordable housing. We put the people that with the mental addictions, mental imperatives, the addictions, the homeless, put them in jail for a weekend or whatnot, and then go back out to doing the same thing they were doing before. Why do we not have no facilities around here for these people? I know we got people that are homeless. We got people that are homeless with addictions. We got people that are homeless with addictions and also have mental problems. But there's no place for them. So they walk up and down the street jeopardizing everybody they walk past because nobody knows what's on their mind, what they're gonna do. Can we please, I heard mentioned that we got a new facility coming that's going to have 2 beds for locals. Can we please get something around here in this city for the people here? Can we use our tax money to pay for something for us? Something that we need. We need places for people that don't have nowhere to go, that have bad issues. Thank you for not shitting on me.
The next person signed up to speak is David Clark.
again, it's me. So, I'm David Clark. I'm a botanist professor at UNCA for the last 25 years. Live in the Five Points neighborhood for the last 21 years, right next to the urban forest. I'd like to share my perspective on the stadium proposal, both from inside the university as a faculty member, but also from the outside as a neighbor and citizen of Asheville. Right? Internally, the faculty, staff, and students are demoralized and afflicted. Right? A culture of fear grips the entire university. Why am I the only one here from the university? None of this is apparent from the outside because the administration recently fired 7 tenured faculty members, and now very few will speak up. Except me, I'm 2 years out from retiring, so here I am. The administration's announcement of their plans was much anticipated, but the immediate reaction was great disappointment, since none of the things that we have been clamoring for are part of their plans. Had the university proposed daycare facilities, affordable housing, infrastructure for outdoor recreation, improved teaching or co-curricular facilities, the university would have overcome any qualms and supported development in the forest. Moreover, their numbers don't pencil out. Right? They talk about $1.7 million, but not starting until 2030 per year for 45 acres. That's in comparison to our $80 million budget. Not going to solve our problems. At the rate of 1.7 for 45 acres, we could sell off the entire Millennial campus and still go broke as a university. This is before the risk of stagflation, tariffs, and deportations. The university will say they are indemnified regarding any downstream risk to the nature of their lease, but we in Asheville will in no way be protected from a poorly developed development with no accountability. Especially given that your authority as city council has been sidestepped in this matter. The university has a long history of unfinished projects like the Help Good Venture and the Road to Nowhere and Chestnut Ridge. Right? As you know, the Broadway corridor is the only major corridor that is not saturated with large retail establishments in this town. Why not build a stadium in one of the many derelict malls, and if development must happen, restrict it to areas immediately next to Broadway, perhaps using a model based on the apartments near Broadway and Chestnut. Those, of course, are luxury rentals. So the real question is, what is the source of the $29 million in public funding, and would any of this be happening without our tax dollars being used? I'm asking you out of a sense of duty to your constituents to have a sense of imagination and support our resolution. We all deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie Phillips.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and citizens. Thank you, Stephanie Phillips, representing Phillips family. Thank you to all citizens, civil servants, especially during Hurricane Helene and the aftermath. Mountain Strong set a good example of emergency response for the country. During national disasters, it's prime time for everything from price gouging, intentional property destruction, other fraud, and acts of war, including but not limited to destruction of vital records. I'm told North Carolina ranks high in record protection and preservation. Thank you for following FEMA regulations and not raising the property tax until the following calendar year. I'm still advocating for the Wounded Warriors College Town brand, best interest of locals, the economy, and national security. I'm also proposing a project for an extraordinary aquatic facility near the VA to serve all aquatic activities to public, our veterans, and future national security training. My family ancestry is about to be disclosed. My grandmother's will is date-stamped, Buncombe County, filed the year after her death, 1970, file 2343. You have a copy. The Justice Department official here at the Agriculture Department on September 12, 2001, with no ID, told me to sign my mother's name for her, which is probably my birth given name, Caroline Ann Phillips. He did not sign the document, no official government signature. You should discuss this with my husband. Next item, we have a team of amphibious international aquatics hydro engineers, which date back to the 1980s, ready to begin assessing and rebuilding dams beginning in Maryland and Pennsylvania, and then traveling worldwide, earning trust and leading way to rebuild one neighborhood, road, bridge, and dam at a time. We request a 10-year moratorium on war. That land grab in 2001 was for water to build 26 in Plum to Asheville, which we would have agreed to in a limited capacity to help agricultural needs and when your systems were needing support. However, Madison County should have come first. Our neighborhoods, college, resorts, and businesses, and we still could have helped you. Designating us an international world peace, preservation, conservation, educational, historical landmark now should include all 5 counties of Western Carolina. That having been said, let's please sign a treaty, celebrate peace, and get to work revitalizing our planet. Thank you for consideration.
The next person signed up to speak is Chris Cotetta, and 3 people have yielded their time. Mary Schultz, Elizabeth Pritchett, and Linda Hall. Thank you.
City Council, thanks for giving me the space to speak today. My name is Chris Catita, and I'm the president of the 5 Points Neighborhood Association. I'm also an organizer with Friends of the Woods. As you may be aware, the UNC Board of Governors last Thursday approved the lease of 54 acres of land from UNCA to its own endowment fund. If it doesn't make sense to you why UNCA would have to lease its own land essentially to itself, you're not alone. Even one of the voting members was confused as to why this was necessary. But most recognize it as a small but important step toward building a stadium where an urban forest currently stands. In September, the board is expected to vote once more, but this time on a lease to a developer who plans to construct that stadium, as well as 30 to 50,000 square feet of retail space and 450 market rate housing units. While we've been told informally that this housing is meant for students and faculty, we have no real assurances this will come to pass. Watch this space when the developer lease terms are made public. We understand that Chancellor Kimberly Van Noort views our legitimate community concerns as nothing more than a speed bump in her path. We understand that she views community engagement as merely PR. And we believe that given the opportunity, she will continue to pursue this development with flagrant disregard for the Asheville community, as well as UNCA's own students, faculty, and staff. We also understand that she's received consistent, resounding advice from her peers, colleagues, and superiors, as well as elected officials, that she must meaningfully engage with the community. And yet, the stonewalling persists. And yet, the plans for development march forward. And I want to tell you why today, to me, it just doesn't make sense. For over 70 years, the city of Asheville and UNCA have enjoyed a harmonious and mutually beneficial relationship. However, the state of this relationship is rapidly deteriorating thanks to the actions of the current university administration. There's a constant refrain I've heard from alumni and faculty alike. UNCA under this administration is unrecognizable. Unrecognizable to the people who've known, loved, and supported it over the years. Does that sound like an institution on the right path? After stabilizing enrollment to pre-pandemic levels in 2024, UNCA predicts enrollment to decrease once again this year, and many believe the actions of this administration are directly to blame. This administration considers itself a stabilizing and revitalizing force for UNCA, but as they take increasingly bold actions to reshape the culture of the university, they abandon their long-established brand identity and alienate their own stakeholders. If they continue on this path and replace a prized urban forest with a commercial entertainment complex, they will alienate vast swaths of the broader Asheville-Buncombe community, including alumni, donors, and prospective students. In their eagerness to plow forward with this project, they focus on the assumed enrollment boost they'll get by investing in sports. This notion in itself does not make sense and is not supported by the literature on the subject, which is extensive, which finds that investment in sports does little to boost enrollment outside of the players themselves. Already a dubious proposition, this development also promises to come at an enrollment cost, as UNCA sabotages its own reputation for environmental stewardship and taints its brand as an ecologically conscious institution. Enrollment is down at colleges and universities everywhere. Adding sports programs has become a popular choice for universities looking to boost enrollment, but the returns are far from guaranteed. In fact, a recent study by the Urban Institute found that only 45% of schools who invested in sports saw increased enrollment. But the truly fascinating finding of that study is that 52% of schools who did not invest in sports over the same period saw increased enrollment. So let me say that again. Schools who did not invest in sports saw a greater boost to enrollment as compared to schools who did. So UNCA is barreling ahead with this development, which will come at a great cost to the city of Asheville, with an extremely dubious proposition for saving itself. It just doesn't make sense. UNCA has a partner in this project, and I'd be remiss not to talk about the Asheville City Soccer Club. I recognize they've been successful in their matches, and they've drawn crowds much larger than one would expect for a city of our size. All signs indicate that Asheville wants a soccer team, and maybe that team can even turn professional. What a boon to the city that would be, to our civic identity and our connection with the surrounding areas, to be host to a successful and beloved sports team. But for Asheville Soccer Club, destroying this critical urban forest to build a stadium complex also doesn't make sense. Asheville may have a burgeoning interest in soccer, but it has for decades built a storied legacy of respect for and connection with our natural environment. As someone who's not from here, and who's lived in many parts of the country, I am amazed at the strength of Asheville's environmentalism. It's something unique, special, and central to our identity as a city. Both Asheville Soccer Club and UNCA rely on their brand for support and patronage from the city of Asheville. But both organizations are putting their brands at risk by prioritizing commercial development over environmentalism in a city that prides itself on the latter. How much reputation loss can these organizations sustain on this quest? You might think such a controversial development is a justifiable investment in our city's economy, but the stadium complex also doesn't make economic sense. My understanding is that the estimated $250 million in increased economic activity is simply a projection by the developer himself and is not based on any real analysis specific to this context. We've not even seen an analysis explaining where this number comes from. In fact, extensive economic research suggests this development will be economically neutral for Asheville and possibly even negative. Asheville business owners should be very concerned about this development. Generally speaking, common wisdom would suggest that stadiums boost economic activity through spillover effects like restaurant visits, shopping, hotels, and transit. But this assumption has been extensively studied by economists. What they found is that these supposed economic benefits actually come at the expense of other local businesses. It's not more money being spent, it's just money being spent in a different place. And it gets worse for Asheville businesses. This isn't just a stadium, it's a self-contained entertainment complex complete with up to 50,000 square feet of retail space. This all but guarantees that it will cannibalize existing local businesses, diverting economic activity away from local business into the pockets of an out-of-state developer. Have I mentioned the developer is from Ohio? The current proposed plan includes $29 million in public subsidies, and that number is just the beginning. Most stadium development projects are subject to cost overruns up to 80%. This developer has very little in the way of past successful projects to suggest they're well equipped to avoid such problems. And the topography of the location also does not make sense for a soccer field. A local architect has estimated they'll spend $16 million just on removing dirt from the property to make way for the stadium. That's to say nothing of the 4 streams that run through the property and the other environmental difficulties this parcel presents. Stadiums also present hidden costs to taxpayers in the form of wear and tear on roads, stress on our aging water infrastructure, use of public services like police and sanitation. The stadium will also make Asheville hotter by replacing 20,000 cooling trees with heat-reflecting concrete. It will worsen stormwater runoff by replacing a 2.2 million gallon stormwater sink with impervious surfaces that send the water down into the botanical gardens, into UNCA's own campus, and into the surrounding neighborhoods. So to recap, $29 million of our tax dollars will be sent to Ohio to prop up a business venture that will hurt local businesses and strain our infrastructure for a stadium development many of us don't even want, and in the process destroy an irreplaceable and vital element of our city's green infrastructure. Make this make sense. I mentioned an upcoming Board of Governors vote in September. If the developer lease is approved, the voting public will lose most of its rights to transparency on this project. We believe that UNCA plans to conduct its performative community engagement after the lease is approved and after the voting public loses most of its real leverage to influence the project. Our single greatest concern is that the woods not be developed at all, that the lease for this property is not signed at all, but rather that the development occurs elsewhere. If our voice is not to be considered until after that decision is made, we've already missed out on the most critical part of this process. I'm calling on this council to pass a strongly worded resolution to protect our critical urban forest and give this community a seat at the table now, not after the woods are sold to an unaccountable developer. Thank you.
Thank you. Ann Walsh.
There's water. Really. Each of you council members were endorsed by the WNC Sierra Club, who are assured voters these candidates have a proven record for addressing climate change and protecting our environment. Many of us voted for you based on their endorsements. Thus, we wonder why some of you are absent in standing up to preserving UNCA's 45-acre mature forest ecosystem just 1 mile from City Hall. This has everything to do with protecting our environment and addressing climate change. This has to do with a huge water, heat, and carbon sink being obliterated for a massive heat-emitting, carbon-emitting, water-guzzling stadium that few are clamoring for. Rather, we have more than 14,000 people who signed a petition pleading with UNCA to preserve the woods. We understand you have limited capacity to make a change here, but still, why are you so reluctant to spend a drop of political capital in something as simple as a resolution? A resolution that would express concern that the proposed development is in opposition to Asheville's established climate action and tree canopy commitments. A resolution to reaffirm your commitment to preserving and restoring Asheville's urban tree canopy and calls on all institutions, organizations, and residents to work collaboratively in support of these goals. A resolution to urge UNCA to reconsider its approach to engage with city officials, environmental experts, and community stakeholders to ensure that any developmental decisions align with Asheville sustainability and climate resilience priorities. If you truly are representatives of citizens, more than you are of big, powerful institutions, please listen to the thousands of us pleading for something as simple as a resolution that we have shared with you. Please, respectfully, now is the time to earn the support of your voters and of the Sierra Club.
Thank you. Baron Northrop.
Thank you. This morning, our circus of a state legislature overrode 8 of Governor Stein's first vetoes on an imaginative range of draconian laws. Fueled by the power of naked gerrymandering, North Carolina is gleefully tailing the federal government's nosedive into authoritarianism. So, at the risk of sounding reductionist, please don't follow suit. Democracy disappears first in sacrifice to convenience. It would be convenient for you to dismantle virtually every local advisory board, but it is inherently undemocratic. Last year, it was convenient to ban clapping in these meetings, despite the First Amendment violation that entails. Here's the thing. The aforementioned federal fascists don't draw the line at gagging local boards. They've demonstrated a commitment to take away the rights of everyone except old, rich, white, straight, cisgender men. Now, none of you are old, rich, white, cisgender men. So, based on the reasonable assumption that you like rights too, I don't think you approve of that plan. Can't blame you. But where I can blame you is that that means you've calculated that you can begin the mudslide into totalitarianism, but then stop when you find most optimal the ratio of rights taken versus conveniences gained. This outlook is at best revisionist history and at worst blatant denialism. An honest look at the history of fascist takeover attempts shows us that smaller institutions of power, that's you, either take a stand or they become fascist collaborators, whether they realize it or not. Put another way, the conveniences you're creating are actually in service of ghouls who will have no respect for you once they are powerful enough and no longer find you politically expedient. How might you take a stand then? Well, forgive me for saying so, but relatively speaking, your lives are pretty comfortable. Keeping the local boards around won't kill you. And their loudest detractor is months from retirement. I have faith that the raise she budgeted herself will enable her to suffer through till the end just fine. Democracy isn't convenient. Democracy isn't efficient. Democracy isn't nimble, to dredge up a big buzzword. If it were, none of us would be here. There is yet more you can do to fight the rising tide of violence. It is not too late to consider a ceasefire resolution. 2 years late is better than never, especially since, in case I haven't made this clear yet, supporting a ceasefire resolution is no longer about Palestine alone. Now, it's also about who gets dehumanized next. And finally, I want to express support for everything that's been said in defense of the UNCA forest. The opaque secrecy with which that project has unfolded, in direct opposition to the overwhelming will of the people, is a microcosm of everything I've been talking about. You are not powerless in this matter either. These are scary days. Every little action counts. Thank you.
Thank you. Lauren Stickles.
Good evening, City Council members. I'm here today to speak not only to you, but to our broader community, those in this room and watching at home. What I have to say weaves together several urgent issues, all connected by deeper systemic problems, flawed power structures, unchecked greed, and policies that continually leave behind the most vulnerable among us. First, the Steady Collective, a vital harm reduction organization in Western North Carolina, is repeatedly being displaced by the city due to zoning issues. Their services, naloxone distribution, syringe exchange, wound care, are not optional. They are life-saving. Leading institutions like Johns Hopkins and the CDC endorse harm reduction programs as essential to community health. I urge this council to stop obstructing their work, partner with Steady Collective, and ensure that they have a stable location to operate in West Asheville immediately. Next, the 45-acre urban forest at UNCA is at risk of being clear-cut for a stadium, market rate housing, and retail. This isn't just about UNCA's financial woes, it is about power, influence, and who benefits. Private developers, contracted professionals such as Asheville Stadium District Real Estate Project, Mark McCullers, an Ohio-based sports real estate consultant, Van Winkle Law Firm, and Parker Poe Law Firms, corporate chain retailers, and wealthy renters will gain. What will the public lose? Biodiversity, shade, recreation, climate resilience. I urge you to take a stand. Advocate for preservation, not profit. Show us what you can do when it matters. Asheville urgently needs real affordable housing, not just what developers label as affordable. This requires curbing the influence of private developers and regulating entities like Airbnb, which continue to erode housing access. We also need connected, protected bike lanes and safer pedestrian infrastructure. Our streets should serve people, not just cars, excuse me. Lastly, why does the city allow Ingalls to sit on multiple empty commercial properties with no accountability? If we are building a stadium, maybe they could offer land. Let's stop letting big corporations hoard and waste our space. In closing, all of these issues and so many more that I have not mentioned are connected. We need leadership that sees the intersections, listens to the community, and acts with courage. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, we too sometimes wish these were give and takes, but we're statutorily required to receive public comment. So we will continue in that process, and please look up the lawsuit we are involved in with Ingalls. Okay, next. Rachel Cohen.
It's not often that I'm taller than the last person before me. That's kind of fun. Hello, everyone. As you said, my name is Rachel Cohen, and I'm speaking on behalf of Sunrise Movement WNC. Good to see all of you, and thank you so much for listening. I just wanted to comment briefly on the proposal about the boards and commissions situation. So, as I'm sure you can imagine, regardless of whatever the intentions of this plan are, what it looks like to the public is fewer chances for people to have their voices heard and participate in the city's decision-making processes. That's what it is. There's lots more members of the current boards and commissions than will ever have the chance to participate in this envisioned new structure. And so I just hope you sit with that, because that is what it looks like, because that's what it does. I just want to comment too on these trade-offs, because I do understand, and I used to be a local government employee, not here, somewhere else. So like, I get that it's extremely time-consuming and really difficult to provide the support that's needed. I would just remind everyone that the trade-offs involved are significant. So what do we consider more important? Do we consider it more important that we make life a little more convenient for city staff who do great work and I appreciate? Or is it more important to make sure that community members have the opportunity to participate in this process, especially the recovery process, where we're all needed? We're all needed, there's so much to do. So folks just want the opportunity to do the work. And really the message this sends is that it's too hard to include those community voices. It's just too hard. And I don't think that's acceptable, not only to us as a group, but to many other members of the community. And I also want to just say one very brief thing about the ULI engagement. Was super excited to participate last night in the meet and greet. That was awesome. I hope we can get some helpful recommendations from them. I just wanted to say that the way that the problem statement is framed as putting economic development in tension with environmental sustainability, yikes. Environmental sustainability does not have to be in tension with economic development and growth. Economic sustainability just means we do our economic development in a way that does not hurt the earth around us and our ability to live in it. And it's kind of a mistake I see amongst a lot of these conversations. For example, we love workforce development. We love more building. We want the workforce development to include green jobs. Thank you.
Anthony Mejia.
Thank you. Thank you. Last time I was here, I spoke on how I wasn't sure the difficulties that would come with trying to rally my community to do more, to stand up for ourselves. In the weeks since, it's been very difficult. It's been difficult to get people to believe the power they have in themselves, that the time is worth it, that putting their safety on the line is worth it. And in a way, I do apologize for all the work you do, all the thankless work, for all the people that come here, but I understand where they're coming from too. We're all feeling hopeless right now. We've gone through a hurricane. That shouldn't have happened. I still drive by gutted and destroyed buildings every day to work. Our homeless problem's only gotten worse. We're not earning more, we're acting like we're okay, and all the meantime, our federal government is falling apart and tearing at us. People are disappearing off the streets. There's a concentration camp in Florida. And we're all just kind of pretending like it's not. I get it. I'm scared too. And it's hard. But people are out there, and they're trying, and they're realizing how bad it's getting. and they're willing to stand up, to try, to organize, and it's not easy. Because I graduated from high school and I went to the military and I didn't think I was smart enough for college, so I don't know where to find a lawyer that knows immigration law or knows tax law. I don't know where to find someone that's been on city council. I don't know where to find anybody but my friends and my family that know something is wrong, and we're all doing something. We're all acting like everything's the same. Before 2020, when the government proved they can take care of us, they just don't want to. Before a hurricane hit the mountains, when climate change hit us on our front door, before we all started to realize that we're all just kind of pretending we know what we're doing while they pick at us, while they take us, and they're gonna take my family first. And I know I've come here and I've yelled and I've probably upset you and maybe scared you at times, but Jesus, I'm scared. And we're trying, we're doing something. We're putting together ordinances. We're talking about what to do next. We had a police interaction class with our communities recently. We're talking about direct action because as much as you say you want to help us, the chief of police still puts driver's license checkpoints outside of construction sites in the River Arts District. I've never seen more Hispanic and Latino people in the River Arts than when they're fixing it. I've never seen more police there than when they're conducting checkpoints because they know they're undocumented. You know they're undocumented, but this country can't survive without us. So we need to stop pretending. Like,
Thank you. Austin Draper. Deborah, maybe tell us if there's anything, I've never heard of these police checkpoints. Yeah, so, yeah.
I'm not familiar with this either. I haven't heard.
Mayor, Assistant Mayor, members of the council, I've come before you to voice my concerns about the development of the UNCA Woods. I would also like to, they're not here right now, but my neighbor in the green sweater who was talking about the committee thing, I'd like to voice my support for that as well. You've heard lots about the woods already from my fellow neighbors here tonight and those of us who have spoken in the past, so I'm going to go a little broader. The planned development of these woods is a perfect example of the broader shift that we see happening in our country. Corruption and greed are infiltrating every aspect of our society. Big moneyed interests bulldozing communities, ruining lives, and destroying the planet. Today, I want to focus my remarks mainly on power. Power in the United States is given by the people to our government. We consent to be governed. Thusly, it is our power that we are talking about. The UNCA Woods development is a prime example of power being taken away from the community and being given to big moneyed interests. All of you who sit before me wield the power given to you by the people. The fact that you do not have a power over the development of this size and magnitude is absurd. They are trying to usurp what should be your power, and when they take your power, they take away our power. You are connected, you are all important, and you have sway over these entities. We implore you to use your power before it is taken away from all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our public comment for this evening.
I have a question that may require follow-up. I know we don't respond to public comment, but for staff, we've been having a conversation at Planning, Economic Development, and Environment about whether or not we should consider additional noise ordinance violations, exceptions, I guess is how you would say it. And I'm just curious because we don't have a lot of say over a future development of a stadium. Would our noise ordinance apply to a 5,000 person capacity stadium and live concert venue?
Brad is prepared for this because several of us have asked him this question.
Council has been asking you a lot of questions about this. Hopefully, we've been providing you answers. The short answer is absolutely yes, as the law stands today. And I give that caveat at the end because there have been some bills floated in the General Assembly this session that have not become law but are still live bills, which could further reduce the local authority and development regulations. That may end up having some effect. As the law stands today, as I said, the noise ordinance would absolutely apply.
Okay.
And to that end, actually, there's been some movement on that bill today. It's House Bill 926. It's now been amended to add Watauga County also, so it would preempt Buncombe County and Watauga County's millennial campuses. And it just moved in the Senate today, and it's now in Senate rules. So that just happened this afternoon.
That's helpful, thank you. I know it's been coming up a lot in conversations because it would potentially impact the financials on a project. And then the second thing is I've seen both a resolution draft from advocacy groups and also an internal position or statement letter. And I just wanted to signal my support for getting that on the August agenda, either one or both, but something that we should make public our position. I know there's things that we can't do, but are we doing what we can resonated with me. I think Sean hit that chord pretty well tonight. And I think value statements are powerful. They are just words, they're not the work, but they are what our community is looking for us to do.
I think there is a majority of council that's supportive of moving forward with a resolution. What I was struggling with is we have one meeting in August, and I don't think we have a meeting of the Policy Finance Committee in August.
Same day.
It's the same day, though.
But we could tackle it there.
Let me just check in with everybody and make sure, because I don't want to, you know, as mayor, I don't want to force it if everybody isn't feeling like it's something they want to take up. But if we did get some consensus around that, we could put it on the agenda review agenda to then be ready to go on the council agenda for, we only have one meeting in August, and it's the last week of August, the Tuesday of the last week of August.
I think for me, the
Was
big
that
part
serious?
about it
Yeah.
is making it, at least
And
public
let
or
it be
sharing
known.
it.
And let it be known.
Sharing it with the advocacy groups first before we move forward with it, because I would hate for us to put them in together and then folks be like, nope, not
Well,
that.
this is the context, right? For context, so when we're all together convening on a statement or, you know, anything, we cannot do so when there's four or more
Right,
of us. So
so
some of
if-
us are grouping, I'm emailing Bo, I'm emailing
Right.
Kim, you know, but we're not all on the same page until we're in the same room.
It's a lot to bother with, but it's just our legal requirements of
Yeah.
not having a quorum, and
That's why
how
it's
do we?
taking
So
so
it's
long.
hard for us to get something like this that's not within the traditional work that staff isn't bringing forward to us. So, but we can do that. I think that certainly. I mean, it just would be, first I would like to make sure that everybody on council sees it and they're okay with moving it forward, and then putting it out there for everyone to take a look at ahead of time.
The drafts I've seen do hit on many of the issues that I heard tonight, you know, in community engagement. I don't want to go too much into depth, but I hear you. I personally am supportive of some kind of statement, and hopefully we'll get there collectively soon.
So the timing is, as I understand it, the next time the Board of Governors is seeing this project is in September. So our meeting would be in late August, so at least there would be, timing-wise, before the next Board of Governors meeting. Oh, and if anybody wants to stay after and chit-chat about this, absolutely, please feel free. But otherwise, anyone else? Otherwise, we are adjourned. Thank you.